There's a strange truth about the Earth that most of us never think about. Human civilization has existed for about 12,000 years. We've built pyramids, walked on the moon, decoded the structure of DNA and mapped the entire surface of Mars. We think we understand the Earth very well. But in early 2025, a team of scientists from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology discovered something in northwest Greenland, deep beneath nearly 2 kilometers of ice. Something no one was looking for, something that wasn't in any known geological model, something that, if confirmed, would force us to rewrite the entire story of intelligent history on this planet. And the question that followed that discovery wasn't a loud one. It was quiet, almost timid. What made this? Greenland is one of the most forgotten lands on Earth. Most people don't think about it. It sits at the top of the world, covered by a colossal ice sheet nearly 3 kilometers thick at its deepest points. A frozen silence has persisted for hundreds of thousands of years, maybe longer. This is one of the most geologically stable, climatically harsh, and scientifically neglected territories on the planet's surface. And for a long time, no one had any reason to look beneath it. Not really look, not with the tools that could see what was truly lying there. But that changed, and that change has opened up one of the most frightening questions modern science has ever faced. If you look at a map of the North Atlantic, you'll see Greenland situated between Canada and Iceland, a massive island spanning nearly 2.5 million square kilometers. It is the largest island in the world, larger than Western Europe if you combine France, Germany, Spain and Italy. But more than 80% of its area is covered by ice. Not the thin ice of winter, but an ancient ice sheet, a massive geological feature that humanity has never seen beneath. Greenland isn't just cold, it's an archive of time. Each layer of ice is a page in the planet's diary, recording the climate of millions of years past. And hidden deep within that archive, something was waiting. To understand what MIT discovered, you first have to understand how we see through ice. For decades, scientists have used a technique called radar sounding, which essentially involves sending radio waves down through the ice and recording how those waves bounce back. Different materials reflect radar in different ways. Ice reflects differently than rock, rock reflects differently than water. And over time, by stacking thousands of these radar profiles on top of each other, researchers can build an X-ray-like image of what lies beneath an ice sheet. This technique was originally developed for planetary science. NASA used it to map the subsurface of Mars. The European Space Agency uses it on the moon's ice caps. And when scientists pointed the same technology at Earth's own ice sheets, primarily in Antarctica and Greenland, they expected to find bedrock, ancient, eroded, unremarkable bedrock. In Antarctica, that's largely what they found. But Greenland told a different story. Starting in the late 2000s, data collected by NASA's Icebridge campaign, a long-term aerial survey program, began to reveal anomalies in northwest Greenland. Strange reflections, shapes on the bedrock surface that didn't correspond to any known geological features. They were small, easy to dismiss, and for a while, most researchers did just that. Dismissed them, but one group at MIT's Department of Earth, Atmospheric and Planetary Sciences decided to take a closer look. They reprocessed the data with newer algorithms, higher resolution models, and machine learning tools trained to distinguish natural topographical features from anomalous geometry. And what came back was astonishing. In an area about 60 kilometers from the coast, at a depth corresponding to terrain last exposed to air before the start of the Pleistocene Ice Age, the radar profiles revealed a cluster of strange formations. Parallel rectangles, evenly spaced in some sections, converging in others. The estimated size of the structures ranged from about 15 meters in width to over 100 meters in length. And they were not random. Dr. Arvid Holmgren, a geophysicist from the University of Copenhagen consulting on the project, reportedly described the initial data review with words that were cautious but incredibly revealing. We expected to see subglacial channels, ancient riverbeds, perhaps volcanic intrusions. What we found were straight lines, repeating geometry, things that in any other context you would immediately call man-made. He paused before adding, but the timescale makes that word very difficult to use. This is where the story becomes truly disorienting. The Greenland ice sheet isn't static. It grows and shrinks over millennia in response to global climate cycles. But the deepest layers, the ones pressing down on the bedrock in the island's interior and northwestern edge, are thought to be incredibly ancient. Some ice core studies suggest that parts of Greenland's basal ice have been frozen and undisturbed for over 1 million years, possibly longer. That would mean the landscape beneath that ice, the surface on which these formations are resting, was last exposed to the sky during a period when, by everything we currently, there was no civilization, no agriculture, no written language, no architecture. Stop and really think about that. Homo sapiens as a species is about 300,000 years old. The oldest permanent structures built by humans, depending on how loosely you define structure, date back about 11 to 12,000 years. Göbekli Tepe, the famous archaeological site in Turkey, often cited as the world's oldest temple complex, is about 11,600 years old. And even that discovery, when it was first made, shook the foundations of archaeology. Now consider what MIT is looking at. Geometric formations buried under ice that might have been there for 500,000 years, possibly more. Formations that, if confirmed to be non-geological, would predate every known human construction by a factor of 40 or 50 times. This is the point where most people start to feel uncomfortable, and that discomfort is precisely the thing worth thinking about. Dr. Lina Vasquez, a planetary geologist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory who independently reviewed the MIT data, offered a cautious assessment. There are natural processes that can create regularity. Columnar basalt, frost polygons, crystalline formations in certain mineral beds. But those processes leave signatures. They have characteristic scales, fracture patterns, mineralogical markers. What we see in the Greenland data doesn't fit with any of those signatures. It's not basalt, it's not polygonal permafrost patterning, and the angular consistency across multiple formations is frankly unlike anything I've ever seen in subglacial terrain. She added, "I am not saying this is artificial, I am saying we currently have no natural explanation that fits." And that distinction is incredibly important because science doesn't work by declaring mystery solved. It works by eliminating possibilities. And right now, the list of natural possibilities is getting shorter. Try to visualize this. Imagine you're flying over a frozen white plain. Beneath you, unseen, sealed under nearly 2 kilometers of compressed ice, is a landscape no human eyes have ever seen. A world of ancient rock carved by rivers that ran dry before our species existed, shaped by forces operating on timescales we can barely comprehend. Now imagine that somewhere in that buried landscape, laid out along what appears to be an old river valley, there are shapes. Not boulders, not ridges, shapes. Rectangular footprints, some of them gathered in clusters of 3 or 4, linear features that run parallel to each other for hundreds of meters before terminating at right angles. A formation that, seen from above, if you stripped away the ice and the millennia, would look unnervingly like the foundation map of a complex, a settlement, a place where something or someone organized space with intent. That is what the radar signals suggest, not definitively, not with the resolution of a photograph or the clarity of an excavation, but with enough geometric consistency that the researchers involved have not been able to explain these formations away. The MIT team has been extremely cautious. Their preliminary findings, shared in a limited circulation preprint and discussed at a closed-door session during a geophysics conference in late March of 2025, do not use the word artificial. They don't use the word structure in the architectural sense. Instead, they describe sublinear and rectilinear anomalies of undetermined origin, and note that further investigation, including potential deep ice core drilling and seismic imaging, is required. But those who have seen the data say the linguistic restraint masks the gravity of what they are looking at. One researcher who wished to remain anonymous reportedly said, "If you showed this data to any civil engineer without telling them where it came from, they'd tell you they were looking at foundations. Period. The problem isn't the geometry, the problem is the location and the age." Let's consider the possibilities honestly. The first and most conservative explanation is that these formations are geological. Simple as that. Some unknown or poorly understood process created them. Perhaps a form of tectonic compression that creates regular geometries under very specific conditions. Perhaps a type of mineralization that has never been observed at this scale. Science is full of surprises, and nature is capable of mimicking order to an astonishing degree. This is the explanation most scientists publicly favour, and it may be entirely correct, but the data, at least in its current state, does not easily support this explanation. The formations lack the mineralogical markers of known crystal structures. They don't align with tectonic stress models for the region, and their arrangement, particularly their clustering and perpendicular endpoints, doesn't match any catalogued geological analogue. The second possibility is more unsettling, that these formations are in fact the ruins of constructed objects, things created intentionally by an intelligence capable of significant engineering. Now, before that sentence sets off every alarm bell in your head, consider this. We're not talking about aliens. We're not talking about Atlantis. What we might be talking about, and this is a hypothesis a small but growing number of researchers are beginning to privately entertain, is the possibility that our understanding of intelligent life on Earth is incomplete. Dr. Marcus Hall, a theoretical archaeologist at the University of Edinburgh, has written extensively about what he calls the blind spots of deep time. He argues that our models of human and pre-human cognitive development are based on an extremely fragmented fossil record and an almost non-existent structural record prior to the Holocene. We assume that because we don't find evidence of complex behaviour before a certain point, it didn't exist. He says that the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, especially when the places where evidence might exist, like the bottoms of ice sheets, the floors of ancient seas, the interiors of jungle tropics, are precisely the places we've never looked. He is quick to add that he considers the Greenland findings tentative and the data incomplete. But he also said something that sticks with you. If we aren't willing to be surprised by the deep past, we aren't doing science. We are confirming what we already believe. The third possibility is perhaps the strangest of all. It's the possibility that these formations were built by something we have no framework to understand. Not human, not alien, but something else. Something that existed during a period of Earth's history for which we have no record because the very conditions that preserve evidence, a temperate climate, exposed land surfaces, geological stability, were wiped clean by the ice. This is speculation, deep speculation, and no credible scientist would present it as a conclusion. But as a question, as an open door in a very dark hallway, it deserves to be acknowledged. Because the data hasn't closed that door, to really grasp what's at stake here, you have to sit with a feeling most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The feeling of not knowing. We live in a civilization that has mapped the surface of Mars in higher resolution than our own ocean floor. We have catalogued billions of galaxies. We have detected gravitational waves from collisions that happened before our solar system formed. And yet, beneath an ice sheet on an island in the North Atlantic, there might be something that rewrites our entire understanding of who came before us. Think about that. Not with excitement, not with fear, but with honesty. The Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Complex multicellular life has existed for about 600 million years. Mammals have existed for more than 200 million years. And in all that time, through all those geological epochs, through mass extinctions and ice ages and continental collisions, we believe that intelligence, true technologically capable intelligence, emerged only once in us, in the final blink of an eye of geologic time. Is that a certainty? Or is it just the story we've told ourselves because we have no evidence to disprove it? Greenland might be asking us to reconsider. Imagine standing on the edge of that ice sheet, the wind relentless, the horizon white in every direction. Beneath your feet, compressed under unimaginable pressure, sealed in a frozen silence for longer than civilization has existed, are shapes, intentional shapes, and no one alive knows who made them, or what they were for, or why they are there in a place where nothing was supposed to be. It is that image, that silence, that weight that this discovery carries. If the MIT findings are confirmed by further investigation, and that is still a significant if, the implications ripple out in every direction. For archaeology, it means the timeline of intelligent construction on Earth needs to be radically extended, not by centuries, but by orders of magnitude. The entire framework by which we understand the development of technology, language, social organisation and engineering would need to be re-examined from the ground up. For climate science, it would add an extraordinary urgency to the study of the Greenland ice sheet, not just for what the melting ice reveals about future sea levels, but for what it might reveal about the past. The MIT team has proposed a follow-up investigation. It would involve deploying a next-generation ice-penetrating radar with significantly higher resolution, coupled with seismic reflection surveys and, if funded, targeted deep ice core drilling to directly access the bedrock formations. This is no simple task. Drilling through nearly 2 kilometers of ice is expensive, logistically demanding, and environmentally sensitive. Greenland's ice sheet is already under immense pressure from climate change, and any intervention must be weighed against the risk of accelerating ice loss. Denmark, which administers Greenland, has reportedly expressed interest in supporting further research, though official statements remain cautious. The Danish Arctic Centre has acknowledged the MIT findings without commenting on their interpretation, stating only that any anomalies detected in the subterranean terrain warrant thorough scientific investigation. But behind closed doors, the conversations are less restrained. Researchers describe a mix of excitement and apprehension. Excitement because the data is genuinely novel. Apprehension because the implications, if the formations are what they appear to be, extend far beyond geophysics. They touch on something fundamental about who we are, about how we define ourselves, about the stories we tell to make sense of our place in the world. And those stories, it turns out, might be incomplete. There is a particular kind of silence that belongs to places where humans have never been. Not the silence of an empty room, not the silence of a forest at night. A deeper silence. The silence of deep time. The silence of a landscape that existed before memory, before language, before the first hearth fire. A silence that isn't empty, but full of things we have not yet learned. Things we may never fully understand. That silence lives beneath Greenland. And now, for the first time, we are hearing it speak. Not in words, not in symbols, but in geometry, in angles and lines and repeating patterns with a precision that nature as we currently understand it does not create. In shapes that lie exactly where they shouldn't be. At a depth that corresponds to a time when, according to every model we trust, there was no one there to build anything. There may be a natural explanation. Maybe in 5 years, someone will identify a geological mechanism that explains it all away. Maybe the lines will turn out to be faults, the rectangles, mineral deposits. The patterns will dissolve into random coincidence under higher resolution imaging. Maybe. But right now, the data says something else. And the honest response, the truly scientific response, is not to explain it away. It is to sit with it, to let the question breathe, to follow the evidence wherever it leads. Even if it leads somewhere we don't expect, even if it leads somewhere that makes us uncomfortable, because that's where discovery lives, not in the answers we already have, but in the questions we didn't know to ask. Greenland has been silent for a very long time, buried, frozen, forgotten. And now, through the patient work of scientists who are simply trying to understand the ice, something beneath that silence has been found. Something with geometry, something with intent, something ancient beyond our comprehension. We don't know what it is, not yet. And maybe that uncertainty, that vast and humbling unknown, is exactly what we need right now. A reminder that the Earth still holds secrets, that the past is deeper than we imagine, that the story of intelligence, of building, of shaping the world with purpose and intent may be far older and stranger than we have ever allowed ourselves to believe. The ice is melting slowly, inexorably. The great white silence of Greenland is thinning. And as it does, the land beneath is beginning to emerge. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, inevitably. What else is down there? We are only just beginning to look. And the universe, it turns out, has been keeping records for much longer than we have. We just have to learn how to read them